Chapter 31. Rachel drinks hot sauce. At 9 p.m. that night, it seemed everyone was all prepared. All had backpacks stuffed with anything that could give them any chance against the cold. When Brandon had shown up that evening, he had come prepared. Turned out the alien annihilator's facility was where Brandon kept a lot of his stuff, and he'd assured Cleo he didn't need any help getting ready this time. Kenneth and Rachel had shown up back at Cleo's house a couple minutes earlier. They were all assembled in Cleo's living room. They were curious what Brandon knew about the Frostlands. Okay, before I say anything about the frosty place we're going to, I just want to show you something, Brandon said and reached into his pocket. What he pulled out was a small bottle of a bright red liquid. All Cleo could see on its label was 3 dark red fireballs on a red background. Hot sauce. Why do we need that? Rachel asked. This here is how we're gonna get through the Frostlands without freezing to death. One shot of it will heat up your body through about 1/3 of the day. Take this thrice and you will survive. Refuse to take it and you will die, Brandon said grimly. Kenneth's mouth already felt spicy just looking at it. Oh no, this can't be the only option. Kenneth raised an arm. Sir, are you sure there isn't a spell you can use to help us resist the cold? Sorry, my inexperience with cold climates means I have not had time to practice spells of cold resistance. I'm afraid this is our only option, Brandon said. Kenneth looked at the file with disgust. I cannot believe this. I hate hot sauce. Can we try it just to have an idea what we're dealing with? Cleo asked. Brandon considered. A pinch shouldn't do much harm. We have more than enough for the 4 of us. Grabbing a spoon out, Brandon filled it up with the sauce and gently handed it over to Cleo. Cleo looked at the sauce. Her tongue burned just by looking at it. Cleo raised it to her lips and got ready to sip it, but Kenneth swatted the spoon out of her hand and it spilled on the couch. What the heck was that for? Cleo scolded. I already know what's going to happen. Your mouth is going to light on fire from the heat, and you'll have to go running for some iced water. I'm not going to let that happen, Kenneth said heatedly. You don't know that's going to happen. I can handle it. Brandon, give me another spoonful, she said, handing the empty spoon back to Brandon. Kenneth decided that he couldn't stop Cleo from doing what she wanted, but he'd hate it if anything bad happened to her. When she got the spoon back from Brandon, she quickly took a sip before Kenneth could do anything, and immediately spat it out, and went running for the fridge. Ha! I was right, told you so, Kenneth said smugly. Cleo grabbed a gallon of icy water from the fridge and started chugging it, splashing water all over herself, making it run down her body and onto the floor. This went on until the bottle was nearly empty. Then she raised it from her lips and put it down on the counter. She couldn't believe how hot it was. How in the heck were they gonna take a whole shot of that tomorrow? 3 times. Whoa, that crap's hot, Cleo said, summarizing everything going through her head at the moment. Once Cleo was seated back in the living room, Brandon said, I was afraid you would react in this way. I wish there was some way to make it more manageable, but other than drinking cold water afterwards, I cannot think of any other way to make it easier, Brandon said. Can I have a shot? Rachel asked, which startled everyone, especially Kenneth. After what had just happened to Cleo, never in Kenneth's wildest dreams did he see Rachel putting herself through that level of pain. Rachel looked at Kenneth. and saw that his jaw had just dropped at her request. "Why do you look so surprised?" Rachel asked Kenneth. "Just 'cause you're too chicken to try it out doesn't mean I have to be. So let me try it," Rachel said to Brandon. Brandon grabbed another spoon, filled it with the liquid, and got out of his seat to gently hand it over to Rachel. She plugged her nose, tipped the liquid into her mouth, and swallowed it whole. Kenneth looked intently at her features, waiting for them to contort in fiery pain. They waited and waited and waited until burp! The sound came out of Rachel's mouth. Smelling it, Kenneth waved a hand in front of his face to get the stench away. "Whoa, that wasn't bad. I feel like I could make some pretty decent chicken wings with that," Rachel commented, and everyone's jaw dropped. Rachel drinks the hot sauce, and she's able to handle it really well compared to the others, and everyone's pretty surprised. Chapter 32, Mount Frost. By the time everyone lost interest in the spicy elixir, it was 10 p.m., and everyone wanted to get as much sleep as possible before the snowy expedition ahead of them the next morning, so the party retired for the night. Cleo's alarm woke her up at 4 a.m. the next morning. They were meant to wake up early so Brandon could fill them in on what they'd be up against in the Frostlands. Once they were all assembled in the living room, Brandon spoke. "I will teleport us to the base of Mount Frost. A winding path will lead us up. Once at the top, it'll probably be a good idea to scope out the land before us, see what kind of dangers are there. And who knows, we may even see the village from up there to the east," Brandon said. Brandon pulled out the bottle of spice elixir and 4 shot glasses. Putting them on the table, he said, "Well, when we get there, it's gonna be blisteringly cold. We'll be lucky if there isn't a snowstorm right when we get there. And don't even get me started on the winds. They chill the flesh like ice daggers." Brandon shivered just thinking of them. Once he was done filling the glasses, Brandon spoke. "Given these conditions, it's probably a good idea to take these shots in advance of getting there. If there is a snowstorm, you may well die within the hour if you don't take it. Let the storm bury you in snow, and you'll die much quicker," he warned them. Kenneth looked at the glass in front of him, then gulped in fear. "I will go first," Brandon said. He had his water bottle ready in his right hand. The second he tipped the contents of his glass into his mouth, he took a long swig of the water. Tears came to Brandon's eyes, and he wiped them with the back of his hand. His breathing was rapid for a while as he tried to get cool air into his lungs. Other than that, he handled it surprisingly well. Not as good as Rachel, though, Kenneth thought. So once again, Rachel took a shot of the stuff and handled it like a boss. It was beyond his comprehension how unfazed she was by the taste of the flaming hot substance. Cleo handled it almost as well as Brandon this time, and attributed her success to the training she'd been given last night. Now there was only one full shot glass on the table, and it was right in front of Kenneth. Oh, hell no. For a minute he just looked at it, his arms shaking in fright. "Come on, Kenneth, hurry. It's not that bad, jeez," Rachel said. Kenneth gave her a withering look. "When a substance causes your whole body to burn from the inside, then it qualifies as that bad," Kenneth said. "Well, I guess I'm still waiting on the whole getting burned alive thing then," Rachel said casually. Just think of how much you'll want something hot down your throat once you're in the cold." Cleo suggested. And so, from a combination of applying Cleo's advice and Kenneth's sheer determination, he got the shot down. He just needed a gallon of water to wash it down. Brandon looked at the time. 5 a.m. Well, would you look at that? We'd best be on our way. Now, everyone hold hands. We're launching through time and space in 3. Everyone did as he said. There was now a ring of arms before them as they clutched each other's hands. 2, 1, blast off, Brandon said, and Kenneth could feel the weight leave his body and feel the rush of being sent through the air at impossible speed. Chapter 33: The Cliff and the Snowstorm. When Kenneth's feet hit the ground, he knew they'd arrived. What he saw in front of him was a narrow path leading up the mountain. Either side of the path was dense with snow-frosted trees. His friends had appeared right in front of him, facing the path. When Cleo turned around and saw Kenneth, her gaze soon ventured to somewhere behind him. You might want to step forwards a bit, she said, pointing. Kenneth soon found out that a drop of about 100 meters was directly behind him, and his heel was hanging over the edge. He leaped forwards and fell headfirst in a pile of snow, making Rachel snicker. Getting up and brushing the snow off his jacket and face, he said, Whoa, that drop behind me. Holy crap, we're really high up. Is this Mount Frost? Kenneth asked a question to Brandon. Yes, this is Mount Frost. We are currently standing at the top of a very large cliff. You'd best watch out for those. Due to some of the sharp inclines on this mountain, we will stand at risk of falling to our deaths if we don't stick to the path. Never stray far from it unless absolutely necessary, Brandon warned them. He looked at the sky. It was surprisingly clear in the area directly above them. He then scoped out the neighboring airspace until, oh shoot, Brandon said, his eyes looking at the sky past Kenneth's head. Kenneth turned around and looked that way until he saw dark clouds. Underneath those clouds was an impossible amount of snowfall. Honestly, it wasn't snowflakes falling from the sky. It was clumps of snow, some the size of school buses. Some of the clumps looked frozen stiff, like impossibly large pieces of hail. Snow blasted into the air everywhere, wherever they landed. But now everyone was seeing what Brandon and Kenneth saw. Immediately, they all knew they had to get to the top of the mountain as quickly as possible. Chapter 34: The Wooden Structure Waiting Out the Storm. An hour ago, Kenneth and company had had the strength to climb up the slope as fast as their legs could take them. Their strength had worn down over time, however, and they were now moving at something closer to a jog. There were patches of frozen ice on the path. If they weren't so tired by now, the patches might have been enough to discourage them from running too fast. Slipping might mean falling back down the path, and if they were injured hitting anything hard, the climb may be slowed significantly as one person might have to assist their ascent up the mountain. Brandon had warned them that since the winds were coming in from the west, and they were in the east, those clouds were coming at them fast. One look behind him into the western sky, and Kenneth knew he was right. He could tell the clouds would soon reach the cliff they'd just been at an hour ago. By the time another hour passed, the storm will have reached them for sure. Kenneth scanned the area surrounding the path, to the left, then to the right, until he saw a wooden structure A wooden framework gave support to the solid-looking roof, and it was held up by 8 wooden beams. Kenneth pointed to it. There, look there. That's just what we need, a place to take shelter while we wait the storm out. Let's go. Kenneth began to direct himself towards the structure, but Brandon held a hand out. That pathetic thing won't last a minute in this storm. We need to press forwards. Once we're at the top, I have a sure way of getting us down to the bottom. Quickly, Brandon yelled over the sound of the approaching storm. Cleo and Rachel had paused their ascent to listen in. It won't do crap for us if we're buried in a mile of snow before we get anywhere near the top. I'm going, and you should come too, Kenneth said, and then went sprinting towards it. Stupid boy, Brandon muttered, then turned to the girls. We have to keep going. We can't let him slow us down. He's made his choice, so come on, we need to get the hell out of here. Brandon ran past Cleo, and Rachel ran after him. Cleo almost did the same, but she wasn't going anywhere without Kenneth by her side. So Cleo took a right turn off the path and ran after the retreating figure in the distance. So they're going to this wooden structure to wait out the storm, and Cleo kind of needs to convince Kenneth to get moving, because that wooden structure is not going to protect them. Chapter 35, The Ice Boulders. Kenneth was seated in the wooden structure when Cleo arrived. The wooden roof was supported by a framework of wooden beams. 8 beams held the structure up, and each one was staked to the ground. 2 wooden picnic tables sat in it, with wooden benches lining either side. Why are you even here? Kenneth asked when he saw her. Brandon just said this thing looks pathetic against that massive storm. Aren't you afraid we'll have snow and ice bury us alive? Yeah, I'm afraid. But if you think it's our best chance, then I'm down to stay here with you, Cleo said. Kenneth narrowed his eyes. What ulterior motives is she hiding? Don't you think Brandon has some kind of magical spell that can allow us to get down the mountain quickly? Kenneth asked. Finally, Cleo stepped in and took a seat next to him. We might never make it up in time for Brandon to use it. Then there'll be nothing between us and that monster of a snowstorm approaching us, Cleo said. Cleo got closer to Kenneth and leaned her head against his shoulder. After a while, he wrapped an arm around her and pulled her closer. Do you really believe we're doing the right thing, staying here? Kenneth asked her softly. The most right thing I ever did with my life is become your girlfriend. I don't know if staying here is the right thing. I honestly don't. But going with Brandon and leaving behind the man I love the most in the world, that's definitely not the right thing for sure, Cleo said. Leaning his head closer to Cleo, Kenneth tilted her head so she was facing him. Say that again. Say I'm the man you love the most in the world, Kenneth demanded softly. Looking into his eyes, Cleo actually complied unwaveringly. Kenneth couldn't hold back any more. He leaned his head forward an inch and their lips met. Kenneth's lips were hot already, even in the cold. In fact, his whole body was hot. Cleo broke the kiss and leaned into his shoulder again. The view is gorgeous from here, isn't it? Cleo asked, and Kenneth realized she was right. This high up the mountain, the icy landscape looked marvelous, pristine even, but what wasn't marvelous was the dark clouds still approaching their position fast. The icy boulders they dropped from the sky sent snow debris flying everywhere. In the area below them, in the west, It was shockingly close. They must have been in there for almost an hour already. We should get moving, Kenneth said, surprising Cleo. She lifted her head off his shoulder and looked at him. When he saw her reaction, he said, "What? I'm only the best guy you've ever dated. I can't go killing myself 'cause this pathetic thing couldn't keep out hundreds of pounds of solid ice. We're getting out of here." So Kenneth is convinced that this structure isn't gonna protect them, and like I guess that his desire to protect Cleo like kind of helps him realize that it's not safe here and that they need to get moving. And he also makes the joke about how he can't kill himself either because basically there's no one else for Cleo, so he can't go killing himself either. So that's The Alien Annihilators, Book 2, The Mages of Magic, chapters 31 to 35. And I hope y'all enjoyed it, and goodbye.